The chronology of the Giza Pyramids stands as one of the most firmly established facts in archaeology. Yet, it is perpetually challenged by theories that propose a radically older origin, often predating the Younger Dryas period that ended around 9700 BC. The mainstream consensus, built upon a century of rigorous excavation and scientific analysis, places the construction of these monumental structures squarely in the Old Kingdom of Egypt during the 4th dynasty, approximately 4,500 years ago. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was built around 2580 to 2560 BC, with the pyramids of Khafra and Menkaure following over the next several decades. However, a compelling alternative narrative, popularized by authors like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval, suggests that the pyramids, and particularly the Great Sphinx, are remnants of a lost advanced civilization that was wiped out by the cataclysmic events marking the end of the last ice age. This theory, known as the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis, posits that the patterns of erosion on the Sphinx's enclosure walls were caused by extensive rainfall, not wind and sand. Proponents argue that the region has not experienced such heavy, prolonged precipitation since the end of the last glacial period around 10,000 years ago, thereby pushing the Sphinx's construction back into deep antiquity. They further support this with the Orion Correlation Theory, which suggests that the layout of the 3 Giza Pyramids mirrors the stars of Orion's belt as they would have appeared in 10,500 BC, framing this date as a kind of first time for the mysterious civilization they believe was responsible. This narrative is powerful and captivating, offering a vision of a forgotten golden age and a cataclysmic reset of human history. Yet, when subjected to the scrutiny of archaeological evidence, Egyptology, geology, and astronomy, this theory faces insurmountable obstacles. The evidence for a 4th dynasty construction is not merely circumstantial. It is a multifaceted and convergent body of proof that directly links the pyramids to the pharaohs Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure. This evidence includes contemporary inscriptions, the archaeological context of the surrounding cemeteries, the evolution of pyramid-building technology, and radiocarbon dating of organic materials embedded in the monument's mortar. The claim that the pyramids were built before the Younger Dryas is a fascinating speculative exercise, but it is a hypothesis that ultimately collapses under the weight of its own inconsistencies and the overwhelming tangible evidence that anchors these wonders to the dynamic and sophisticated society of Old Kingdom Egypt. The most direct and irrefutable evidence linking the Great Pyramid to Pharaoh Khufu comes from the monuments themselves. In the 19th century, explorer Colonel Richard Weiss discovered several quarry marks and cartouches in the inaccessible relieving chambers above the king's chamber. These inscriptions, painted in red ochre, were made by the original work crews and named the gangs responsible for building different sections of the pyramid. Critically, these graffiti include the hieroglyphic cartouche of Khufu himself, with phrases such as, "The gang, the white crown of Khnum Khufu is powerful." These marks were not placed for public display. They were administrative notes left by the builders, sealed away from the world upon the pyramid's completion. Their authenticity has been verified by generations of Egyptologists and represents a contemporaneous record directly connecting the structure to Khufu's reign. Furthermore, the entire Giza Plateau is an archaeological landscape from the 4th dynasty. The cemeteries immediately surrounding the pyramids contain the mastaba tombs of Khufu's highest officials, his immediate family members, including his mother, Queen Hetepheres, whose burial chamber was found with its furniture largely intact, and his sons. Inscriptions within these tombs explicitly reference their service to Khufu and his horizon, the name for his pyramid complex. This creates an undeniable social and historical context. The pyramids are the central features in a vast, functioning royal necropolis from a specific period, not isolated anomalies in an empty landscape. The scientific technique of radiocarbon dating has provided independent confirmation of the pyramid's age, even while highlighting the complexities of such analysis. Scientists have been able to date the pyramids by extracting tiny fragments of organic material, primarily charcoal, from the fires used to prepare gypsum mortar, embedded within the core blocks. The challenge, known as the old wood problem, is that in a tree-sparse environment like Egypt, wood was a precious commodity that was often recycled for centuries. A piece of charcoal used in mortar could therefore come from a tree that was cut down hundreds of years before the pyramid was built, giving a radiocarbon date that is anomalously old. Despite this inherent scatter, large-scale radiocarbon dating projects have yielded decisive results. The dates do not cluster around 10,500 BC or any other pre-dynastic era. Instead, they form a coherent group centered in the 27th to 26th centuries BC. When calibrated, and with the old wood effect taken into account, these dates align perfectly with the historical chronology for the reign of Khufu, around 2580 to 2560 BC. This scientific data provides a powerful, independent line of evidence that corroborates the timeline derived from archaeology and textual analysis, firmly ruling out a construction date thousands of years earlier. The theory of a much older Sphinx, championed by geologist Robert Schoch, rests on the interpretation of its erosion patterns. Schoch argues that the deep, vertical, and undulating weathering channels on the Sphinx's enclosure walls are characteristic of water erosion from prolonged and heavy rainfall. He contends that the wind-blown sand that dominates the Giza climate today creates horizontal, scouring erosion, not the rounded, runoff-driven patterns seen on the Sphinx. From this, he concludes that the Sphinx must date to a time before 5000 BC, when the climate in Egypt was significantly wetter, potentially as far back as 10,000 BC. However, this hypothesis has been rigorously challenged by other geologists and Egyptologists. Critics point out that the limestone at Giza is not uniform. It consists of alternating layers of hard, durable rock and soft, friable rock. The body of the Sphinx is carved from a particularly soft and porous layer, which is highly susceptible to exfoliation and chemical weathering from wind, humidity, and, crucially, the direct runoff of occasional but torrential rainstorms, which do occur in the region even today. Furthermore, the archaeological context is decisive. The Sphinx is not an isolated monument. It is an integral part of Khafra's pyramid complex. The Sphinx Temple and the Valley Temple, built from blocks quarried from the Sphinx enclosure, are constructed in the same style and with the same masonry techniques as Khafra's pyramid. The statuary and iconography found within the Valley Temple are unequivocally Old Kingdom in style. To argue that the Sphinx is 7,000 years older than Khafra's complex is to propose that for millennia, a colossal lion sculpture sat unrecognized on the Giza Plateau, only to be suddenly adopted, given a pharaoh's head, and integrated into a perfectly aligned funerary complex by pure coincidence, a scenario that most archaeologists find untenable. The evolution of Egyptian pyramid construction itself provides a powerful argument against a pre-dynastic origin. The Giza Pyramids did not appear out of a vacuum. They are the ultimate refinement of a clear and documented architectural progression that began with the simple mastaba tombs of the First Dynasty, evolved into the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara in the Third Dynasty, and saw further experimentation and failure with the bent pyramid and the red pyramid of Sneferu, Khufu's father, at Dashur. This step-by-step progression shows Egyptian engineers learning through trial and error how to build a true, smooth-sided pyramid. The Giza Pyramids represent the perfected culmination of this process. The idea that a lost civilization built the perfect pyramid first, And then the Egyptians spent centuries clumsily trying to reinvent and replicate their own ancestors' work, only to finally rediscover the correct technique in the 4th dynasty. Defies logical narrative construction. The evidence on the ground shows a clear and continuous line of development rooted in Egyptian culture, religion, and technology. In conclusion, while the notion of a lost civilization from the end of the last ice age building the Giza Pyramids is a captivating story that taps into a deep-seated human fascination with mystery and forgotten worlds, it is not supported by the evidence. The convergence of inscriptional, archaeological, contextual, and scientific data forms an unassailable case for a 4th dynasty construction. The true story of the pyramids is no less magnificent. It is the story of the ancient Egyptians, a people of extraordinary ingenuity and organizational skill, who, within the known trajectory of their cultural development, achieved one of the most breathtaking architectural accomplishments in human history.